welcome back to the final episode of Viewcast. I'm sure you're all absolutely devastated. My name is Lola Hibbert, and so far we have delved into subjects such as AI and the larger scale of sustainable practice. But what does this all actually mean practically on the ground for new up-and-coming theatre makers? In today's episode, we are exploring the actual issues affecting emerging theatre creatives. Jamie Holland, the co-producer of this episode, sat down with Valencia Spearpoint and Rebecca Pryal from the Bread and Roses Theatre in Clapham to talk about running a fringe venue in a cost of living crisis.
Hello, I am joined by Valencia and Rebecca from the Bread and Roses Theatre today. What do you think are the primary issues facing the performing arts industry today? And do you find it competitive in the industry currently with your business model as a working venue?
From an artist's point of view, and from a venue point of view, really, I think funding is a massive issue. I think we're not entirely funded properly, and the resources are very low, and I think it's difficult for then, as we were talking about before, working class artists to get into the industry and to maintain a career within the industry as well. So I think that's probably quite a big issue, and it also is an issue for venues too. Like I said, we're box office split. We take ticket sales only. We work other jobs. We are freelance in the industry, so we're constantly balancing a lot of other stuff in order to sort of, make our financial ends meet. So yeah, I think there's that probably for me is one of the ones that is up there. Yeah. I don't know about you. What do you think?
No, I agree. That would have been exactly what I said, really. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really tricky as well when you're trying to like we, for example, we expanded the Clapham Fringe into the Lambeth Fringe Festival, and with that comes, triple the amount of work, if not more. And it's and everyone's first question is like, oh, so it's funded then, is it? Or you're getting money from so and so, are you? And we're like, no.
What I guess I'm not really sure what our role in that is as a small arts organization, and how much more we can do in order to sort of offer accessibility into the space or into the arts as a whole, bar us, not making any money at all. We have to run a business, so where we don't do any hire fees. We keep our registration fees for the Fringe really low. But we
also know just touch on that. Sorry, but I don't know if it was mentioned before, but also we do run an emerging artist program yearly, and that's something that it helps, doesn't it? Because then we can give an emerging artist, some experience, I suppose, within the field without having to go out and pay loads of money and this and that, but you know what I mean.
Completely understand that. So I guess moving forward from that, what do you see for the future of this industry, like at this point? What's going to develop to it, and you can talk specifically with your own mission of fringe theatre. Is it going to go down more solo shows, or it in 10 years time? It's hard to predict these things, but I think it's interesting to kind of get the perspective of within your business what the future looks like for you.
I do think there's still a massive place. I feel like there's such a massive place still for fringe theatre within the sort of arts landscape as a whole, and particularly pub theatre. I think it's really funny when you speak to people who are not from the UK. It's such a British thing, I guess. I think there's especially in London, there's such a huge landscape and rich sort of tapestry of stuff coming in all of the time. So I think the culture will continue. I don't know about the landscape of the shows and what they'll look like, but like we said, there's a lot more solo shows. I don't know if that was sort of reaction to a lot of people being alone. and having the opportunity to create those shows. So I don't know if that is something that will stick. I have seen, I guess, bigger patterns in like expansion of sort of like gig theatre and music more into theatre and digital theatre, so a lot more digitalized stuff, and there's a lot more shows that come now that integrate social media or other types of digital media, which I think is really exciting. So I think there's definitely like future and hope and good things. I know we've spoken a lot about the sort of the finances and the difficulties of it, but you know, we expanded the Lambeth Fringe, for example, and we went from 4 venues last year in Clapham to opening it up into the borough, and 15 venues we've got this year, with a waiting list for next year. So there's obviously still, you know, appetite for it and for fringe festivals and for people to create. So I think that's really exciting, and I think the fringe landscape is sort of where the exciting work is made, if I do say so myself.
But like, you know, if you're looking to like enter into the fringe scene in sort of whatever capacity or you know, shape or form, I think it's really important to go out and meet people, like go to networking events. Like we run a networking event usually twice a year, and people really do sort of, you know, come away with, you know, more sort of like links and ideas and, you know, stuff like that really. And I mean, that's, yeah, the more people you can kind of network with, I think really helps, you know, to sort of get things off the ground in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think on that, like, contact the venues as well. Like if there are particular, especially smaller venues, you know, we often get emails from people and we might not reply immediately, but we always do, and we always try to, you know, offer any sort of help or advice if people are asking for it, or if they want to come and see the space, or yeah, like come along to a networking event. Also a lot of like fringe venues, especially pub theatre venues, they run front of house teams, so they might ours are like some of them just are voluntary, some of them get paid a little bit, or like an expenses paid type thing. And I think most of the pub theatres have that, and it means you can network with other companies. You can go and watch a show, maybe get paid, and get to meet new creatives and stuff. And that's a really nice way in, I think, if you're sort of starting out.
Thank you so much, Valencia and Rebecca, the artistic and managing directors of the Bread and Roses Theatre. Next up, Jamie had the opportunity to speak to Humna Abdullah, freelance theatre producer, Stage 1 participant, and former Theatre 503 producer, to share her experience producing in the current climate.
Hello, Humna. Thank you so much for joining us today. During this journey, what do you think are the primary issues facing the theatre industry currently?
Okay, truthfully, we adore this industry and we adore everything that it's doing.
We do.
And there are things that have gotten better, specifically coming out of the pandemic, but there is still quite a bit, and we seem to be getting to a point where we talk about progress and we talk about things changing to benefit audiences specifically, and I feel as though we end up backtracking, or as a result we are finding other issues which we should be, you know, delving into. One thing that is being talked about a lot is accessibility, and not purely in the sense of just having relaxed performances and trigger warnings, and that's a whole different conversation that we could probably get into. But the conversation lately around accessibility to actually buy into theatre, and because it is an investment, unfortunately, and trying to talk to audiences and convince them, you know, spend your time, spend your money. We are not just asking, like, the truth of it being, we're not just asking for their time, and we're not just asking for them to kind of believe in us and to support us. We are asking, this is your hard-earned money, trust it with us, and kind of back us what we're doing for a moment. Which is hard to do if we're then not allowing them the choice to give what they can. And that's not me saying that pay what you choose is always the answer, but I feel as though having different tiers and having more variation in choices for people coming in is so significant, because as much as producers specifically, we look at the demographics and we're talking about marketing and we're talking about how do we get the audiences in, but also allowing the door to be open for people outside of the demographic, the surprise people that are like, come in and check this out because they can afford to kind of walk in and be like, let me find this out and find a gem and find a way to kind of support, which is something that I think is an ongoing conversation, and I don't quite think we've got the answer to it just yet, but I think it's an openness to actually allowing audiences to feel as though they don't have to be able to give the maximum to be able to come in to see a show. London specifically being a prime place for tourism, specifically in theatre, if we can let people actually come into London and be like, if I walk through Theatreland, what do I see and what bright light's going to catch my eye? And it's something that is different, it's something that is new, and it comes from a new voice, and they walk away being like, actually, I want to follow the journey of this director, this writer, this actor in particular, because they looked like me or sounded like me or did something that just represents who I am. And we're at a point where new writing is really struggling, and we're getting to a point, we're not getting to a point, we are at a point in which so much is kind of closing down, hoping for more opportunities and more knowledge, but also an abundance of options. And I feel, because if we're talking about the way that our industry, I think, gets so focused on a lifeline, I want there to not have to be like one single lifeline that we are dependent on, and then when the opportunity is away, we're all scrambling again. The ideal is that we're in a position where people are like, oh, I have the knowledge to check out this route, this route, this route. And there's like backups to it. And that be an option that allows people to sustain themselves in the process of figuring out which route can go forward. If you want to find me anywhere, if you're watching this and you want to have a chat and you feel like we align in any way, I'm Hum Creates across all social media. My website is hamnaabdullah.com. You can also give me a poke over there. As I said, if you feel like we align in any way, I hope this is a little bit more reassuring that there are people in this industry that want to push for more, just more variety and more diversity. And we're getting a little bit closer to it every day, I think.
Massive thank you to Hamna for speaking to us. Finally, Jamie caught up with John Barton, a writer, coincidentally writing Jamie's show Cameraman, available online now. They spoke about the experiences of a writer and the comparison between writing for screen and for stage.
Hello, John. How are you doing today? You okay?
Hi, Jamie. It's really good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
So could you tell us a little bit about the journey into making Cameraman and the process behind it?
Yeah, so there's a kind of a practical process, and there's also kind of inspiration behind it. So the practical process was, my first play was four characters, and then my second play was 6 characters. And I realized I was getting bigger, and I felt like, well, probably it would be wise to also think about scale. And I was always when I was writing the short plays, I was always trying to sort of challenge myself and go, just write for 2 characters, just write for 1, just write for 3, just so I could feel like I could flex the muscles a little bit. And in practical terms, Cameraman was an exercise in, can you write for 1 person, 1 actor on stage? It is essentially a monologue. And how do you diversify that? How do you make it entertaining in a way that it survives 1 hour of audience attention? And there is enough in that the audience are interested in the journey they're being taken on. So I had actually already developed it with a director and a producer friend. And you know, this is interesting because this is one of those moments that's one of the real challenges of the theatre industry. Is it's really, really challenging to find producers that are able to, I guess, produce new writing in a way that feels like it's solvent. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that private equity is very difficult to come by. The other thing is that you've sort of got to kind of, you know, in the pillars of your career as a producer, I think one of the things that you sort of got to do is find that thing that you're known for. And then, you know, you could have a hit in Edinburgh, for instance, and then from there you can grow your brand and you can develop a slate and so on. I was working with a producer that had just finished working on a play that had won a lot of awards. It was Theatre 503 at the time, and they were coming off the back of that. But she was having that conversation with herself and going, I don't have private equity. I've got that, but you know, where do I go? And you know, quite rightly, there sort of comes a point in your life where you're thinking, well, what's the long-term, what's the longevity of this? Is this future-proof? Is it sustainable? And at the time, you know, we had pitched Cameraman to various buildings, you know, the Arcola, Southwark Playhouse, and so on. We pitched it to companies like High Tide. We were, you know, dancing around the idea of doing it in Edinburgh. So all of that was that was a conversation that was still kind of happening. But ultimately, the producer had gone, we had got so many no's, you know, we put it out into the world multiple times. And that producer had gone, I just think we've run out of road. I don't know where else we can send it to. And then the story ultimately is that Vaults 22 was cancelled due to a variant of COVID, which was Omicron. And so, you know, and there are all sorts of reasons why that festival couldn't go ahead. It wasn't just that, but there are all sorts of reasons why it didn't happen. And so it sort of just stopped, you know, point of view, I guess. And I'm sort of very aware that Vaults 22 affected, I think it was 600 artists in total at the time that had plays on. And those were the ones that were kind of in the first wave. So they were going to be, you know, producing their shows in, I think, you know, the opening month, and then they were going to move on to the other ones, or 600 artists. So there's a scale to that. And there is a human cost to that, which is that people need to find ways to get their work seen. And I think there are fewer new writing nights. I think there are fewer situations where you could get your play on in front of people for a week, and you could invite people from the BBC, you could invite people from theatre buildings themselves, literary departments. Quite a lot of theatres are shutting down the literary departments because there just isn't the, I mean, I guess I don't know what it is, but I think Arts Council have changed their funding policy. I don't think it's necessarily, you know, a fiscally appropriate or a fiscally responsible proposition for them to have literary departments now, especially because in the case of Hampstead, they've got sort of freely admitted that they're not going to do new plays. They're going to do, you know, plays that are a commercial proposition because they know they can sell them. So at the end of the day, you know, that what theatre is constantly having to do is this kind of tussle with, yes, we want to make work that is socially significant and feels important and feels like it's having a dialogue that reflects society we're in right now, but also it's a business and we have to be able to sell tickets. And I think that's one of the things that's always going to be against new writers and new artists in general, because they are seen as a risk. And how do you offset that risk? You get work on. If we can't get work on, we can't offset the risk. And it just goes round and round and round. And I don't think I know what the solution to that is. But then having said that, I'm not a tastemaker. I'm not a gatekeeper. So I think I think it's going to take a few years for it to wash through yet. I think the theatre industry is in pretty dire straits at the moment. Look, if you were going to reconcile how difficult and challenging and confrontational the theatre industry can be and how full of rejection it is, because it is just, you know, you get hundreds of rejections a year. The only way I think you can kind of reconcile yourself with that is that writing for me is kind of a compulsion. It's something I sort of have to do, because if I don't do it, I go a little nuts. So I think the writers that stay the course are the ones that have to do it, not because it's an addiction, but because it's just part of their life. And if they didn't do it, they would sort of lose a way for them to sort of have a dialogue with and communicate with the world around them. And if you think of it like that, then of course you're going to keep writing. So that's the only thing you can do, is you just got to keep writing and keep working however you can.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to every single person that has given their time up to be able to make this podcast possible. My co-creators, Jamie Holland, Karis Winter, and Bahar Mohammadi. All of the other episodes are available online. Do continue to check out the shows. We have 9 fantastic one-act, brand new shows available online for a limited time. So get in there before they're gone. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you soon.